I saw her. Through the glass office in the middle of the workday, lips pressed against the man who controlled both our careers, my boss. And just hours later, my name vanished from the promotion list I'd been working toward for 3 years. She didn't just take the job. She looked me in the eye, her lipstick still perfect, and said, "You'll never belong here." It wasn't anger that hit me. It was colder, sharper, the kind of clarity that only comes when you realize the rules were never meant to protect you. I'd built my career from nothing, Pittsburgh steel dust under my nails, nights spent studying in a cramped apartment, 15 million in profit last quarter alone, clients who trusted me with their futures. But in a single moment, she turned it into her victory. The thing about people like her, they think you'll walk away. They think humiliation will make you quiet. But humiliation, it's fuel. So I started counting moves, not days. Every late night I'd ever worked, every email I'd ever sent, every deal she'd stolen, they became pieces of a weapon I was going to use. Because revenge isn't rage, it's precision. And when I'm done, she'll wish I'd just gotten angry. If you think this ends with me fading into the background, you might want to stay until the last word. I tell stories like this every week. Subscribe now because you won't want to miss how this one ends. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 34 years old, and for the last 8 years, I've worked at Hamilton and Burke Investments, right in the heart of Manhattan. I didn't come from the Ivy League. No silver spoon, no family connections. I grew up in Pittsburgh, where my dad spent 32 years in a steel plant, and my mom worked double shifts as a nurse. They didn't teach me about hedge funds or boardroom politics. They taught me that you show up, work hard, and keep your word. When I first walked into Hamilton and Burke, I believed that was enough. I started as an entry-level analyst, the kind who stayed long after the lights went out. I took on accounts no one wanted fixed portfolios. Everyone else thought were a lost cause. And it paid off. Clients trusted me, my numbers climbed, and my reputation followed. Now I'm a senior financial analyst, managing high net worth clients, with portfolios worth more than I'll ever see in my own account. Last quarter alone, I brought in over 15 million in profit for the firm. But I wasn't thinking about numbers when this started. I was thinking about the phone call to my mom telling her I might finally be promoted to vice president of client strategy. She told me she'd make my favorite pot roast if I came home that weekend. Back then, I thought this chapter of my life would be about achievement. I didn't know it would turn into a story about betrayal and revenge. Her name is Vanessa Price. She joined Hamilton and Burke 3 years ago. No slow climb, no grinding through the ranks. She arrived from a boutique firm in Connecticut with polished credentials, the right last name, and a smile that could open doors before she even touched the handle. Within 18 months, she was a senior associate. Not because she outperformed the rest of us, but because she understood the one game I never wanted to play: office politics. Or more precisely, who to stand next to when the cameras were rolling, and who to stand closer to when they weren't. Vanessa had a way of making herself indispensable to the partners. She volunteered for every high-profile project, made herself available for after-hours drinks, weekend charity events, and golf trips in the Hamptons. Rumors floated through the cubicles like cigarette smoke, thin, toxic, hard to ignore. An unconfirmed relationship with Richard Haynes, our CEO, was mentioned more than once. I wanted to believe it was just gossip, but the longer she was here, the more I saw her name on projects she hadn't touched, and mine missing from ones I'd built from scratch. She was charming in public, but in meetings she could slice a colleague's credibility with one well-placed question. And she didn't mind stepping over the bodies, metaphorically speaking, if it meant climbing faster. Vanessa was the kind of person who could make betrayal look like strategy. And in this office, that was the most dangerous skill of all. The week before everything unraveled, I was certain my career was about to change forever. The vice president of client strategy had just announced his retirement, and for months my name had been quietly circulating as his likely replacement. It wasn't just wishful thinking. I had the numbers, the clients, the trust of partners who would see me deliver year after year. Last quarter alone, my portfolio generated more revenue than anyone else in our division. I'd spent late nights in the Manhattan office, the city lights bleeding through the blinds while I reviewed trades line by line. I skipped vacations, missed birthdays, stayed on calls, until my voice went hoarse because I believed the payoff would come. That Friday, after closing a restructuring deal worth $15 million in profit, I called my mom in Pittsburgh. She answered in her scrubs, still at the hospital, and when I told her the news, she laughed, said she'd make my favorite pot roast if I came home that weekend. I promised I would. Walking into the office on Monday, I felt light, like all those years of grinding were about to be recognized. The elevator ride to the 43rd floor felt shorter than usual, my reflection in the polished steel doors looking almost proud. Back then, I thought this chapter would be about achievement. I had no idea it was the calm before the storm, and that storm had a name: Vanessa Price. Monday afternoon, the partners called an all-hands meeting in the main conference room. The air felt different, tense, expectant. I took a seat near the center, my notepad ready, my mind rehearsing how I'd accept the promotion without sounding smug. Richard Haynes, our CEO, stepped up to the head of the table. He smiled the kind of smile meant for press photos, not honest conversations. After a thorough review, he began, "We've decided the new vice president of client strategy will be..." He paused just long enough for my pulse to spike. Vanessa Price. Applause broke out around the room, polite but sharp in my ears. I kept my face still, though I felt the heat rise in my chest. Then Richard added the part that cut deeper than the title I'd just lost. "She's a better cultural fit for where we're headed as a firm." Those words, cultural fit, were a code I knew too well. It meant I didn't have the pedigree, the country club connections, the old money ease that opened doors here. It meant my middle-class Pittsburgh roots were something to be hidden, not valued. Vanessa's eyes found mine across the table. Her smile was polite, almost sympathetic, but her eyes, they were victorious. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just a win for her. It was a message for me. I wasn't part of their world, and unless I changed the game, I never would be. I left that conference room with my promotion gone, but the real damage didn't hit until later. It came in flashes, little memories that stacked like evidence in my head. The quarterly strategy meeting I was never invited to, even though half the agenda was my accounts. The client dinner where my seat mysteriously disappeared, replaced by Vanessa's. The way my name had been pushed to the bottom of the email chain on projects I had led from start to finish. I told myself those were just office politics, the kind you learn to ignore. But now I saw the pattern. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. A slow, calculated isolation. Back at my desk, the Manhattan skyline stretched beyond the glass, all sharp edges and false promises. I thought about Pittsburgh, about my dad coming home from the steel plant with grease on his hands and pride in his work. He never once had to worry about someone stealing credit for loading a truck. Here it was different. Here the theft wasn't physical, it was invisible, but just as real. The day moved on without me. Emails piled up. Vanessa walked past my office, twice her heels sharp against the marble floor, her perfume trailing behind her like a victory flag. By 5 o'clock, the heat in my chest had cooled into something else, something colder. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was done playing defense. 2 days after the promotion announcement, I was in my office, catching up on client reports. The hum of the air conditioning and the muted buzz of Manhattan traffic outside felt almost ordinary, until a small notification blinked in the corner of my screen. Access alert. Brennan portfolio user V. Price. 10:42 a.m. Vanessa Price. She had no reason to open that file. The Brennan account was mine. I'd managed it for years, built it from a single referral into a $12 million portfolio. At first I thought it might be a mistake, someone clicking the wrong folder, but then I checked the access log. She'd been in there 3 times in the past month, each time right before a major client review meeting. My jaw tightened as I scrolled further. Other accounts, other clients, all tied to me. I remembered my dad's voice from years ago. If someone keeps showing up where they don't belong, they're not lost. They're looking for something. Vanessa wasn't lost. She was preparing to make my clients hers. I sat back in my chair, staring at the skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city felt different now, less opportunity, more battlefield. If she wanted a war over my accounts, she just declared it. And I don't lose wars, I didn't start. The more I dug through the access logs, the more the pattern emerged. But the real hit came on a Wednesday afternoon. I was reviewing a pending trade authorization for the Kingston manufacturing account, a conservative family trust I'd managed for years. The trade was aggressive, high risk, nothing like what the client had approved in our last meeting. Then I saw it, my signature, at the bottom of the authorization form, only It wasn't mine. The loops in the sea of coal were wrong. The pen pressure uneven. It looked like someone had traced it from another document. I pulled the original files from my archives. Side by side, the forgery screamed at me. Vanessa, it had to be. No one else had access to both my physical signature file and the client documents. And the trade, it just happened to funnel a large commission toward one of her Connecticut contacts. For a moment, I just stared at the paper, the Manhattan skyline blurring beyond the glass. She wasn't just circling my accounts anymore. She was inside them, rewriting my work, putting my name on deals that could blow up in my face. This wasn't politics. It was sabotage. And if she thought I'd let it slide, she'd miscalculated. Badly. The forged signature was enough to prove intent, but intent wasn't the same as proof the partners couldn't ignore. I needed more. That's when I called Ryan Mitchell. Ryan had been my friend since my first year at Hamilton and Burke. He worked in compliance, quiet, methodical, the kind of guy who noticed details everyone else missed. We met that evening at a small bar on East 45th, far from the finance crowd. Over 2 beers, I laid out the access logs, the forgery, the suspicious trades. Ryan didn't look surprised. I've been seeing red flags for months, he said, lowering his voice. Vanessa's been reallocating projects. Deals are getting pushed through without standard approvals. And every time the commissions spike, they seem to connect back to a couple of firms in Connecticut. Connecticut, her old stomping ground. He slid a folded printout across the table. It was a report of recent account changes. 3 of my clients' portfolios had been shifted into high-fee investment products in just the last quarter. Products managed by one of her former colleagues. And Ethan, Ryan hesitated, glancing around. She's got Richard covering for her. Anything you report internally, it'll die before it reaches the board. I leaned back, the noise of the bar fading into a low hum. This wasn't just sabotage anymore. It was a network. And if Vanessa thought her safety net made her untouchable, she was about to learn otherwise. By the time I left that bar on East 45th, the decision was made. I wasn't going to HR. I wasn't going to plead my case to the partners. Vanessa's game was played in shadows, and I'd have to beat her in the dark. For the next 2 weeks, I worked 2 jobs. By day, I played the diligent senior analyst, hitting my numbers, smiling in meetings. By night, I became something else entirely. An archivist, a collector of sins. I pulled every email thread involving my accounts from the past 2 years. Saved trade confirmations, client communications, and approval forms. I flagged anything that linked Vanessa to her Connecticut contacts, anything that showed Richard's fingerprints on unauthorized trades. Ryan fed me reports from compliance quietly in unmarked envelopes. Patterns emerged, sudden portfolio shifts, inflated management fees, commissions that bypassed company accounts entirely. I even started backing up my own voice messages in case someone accidentally wiped them from the system. Every scrap of data became a piece of a weapon I was building. This wasn't just about getting my promotion back anymore. It was about dismantling the entire structure that let her climb over me. But I knew I needed more than evidence. I needed a strike that would hit both her career and her life. And I already knew where to start. His name was Michael Price, her husband. Michael Price was one of Manhattan's top divorce attorneys. I'd seen him once at a company gala, tall, sharp suit, the kind of presence that made people lower their voices when he walked by. The irony of his situation wasn't lost on me. I waited for the perfect opportunity. It came during the firm's quarterly dinner at the Metropolitan Club, the kind of place where the chandeliers cost more than most apartments in Pittsburgh. Vanessa was there, draped in black silk, smiling like she'd already won the year. Halfway through the second course, I excused myself. In the hallway, I pulled out my phone and dialed Michael's office number. "This is Michael Price." "Mr. Price?" I said evenly. "You don't know me, but I work with your wife at Hamilton and Burke. I think you should know she's been having an affair with our CEO, Richard Haynes." Silence. Then measured. "Who is this?" "Someone who thinks you deserve the truth. Check her credit card bills, the Plaza Hotel Tuesday afternoons. Cartier jewelry. Weekend trips, she said, were client meetings." I gave him just enough to confirm it himself. Then I hung up and returned to the dining room. Vanessa was mid-toast when I lifted my glass. To Vanessa, I said, "May you get everything you deserve." She smiled, missing the blade hidden in the words. The personal strike was just the opening move. The real damage would come from exposing the machine that kept her safe. That Sunday night, I logged into my personal laptop and opened the folder I'd been building for weeks. Hundreds of documents, trade confirmations, client statements, internal emails, even voice messages. Every file told the same story: Vanessa steering clients into high-fee products managed by her Connecticut associates, pocketing kickbacks through a Delaware shell company. I didn't send it to HR. I went straight to the Securities and Exchange Commission. Their online portal asked for supporting documentation. I uploaded everything. Then I called the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority and the New York State Attorney General's office. 3 different angles of attack, none of which could be quietly buried by Richard or the partners. By Monday afternoon, my evidence was in the hands of people who didn't care about cultural fit. They cared about felony counts. I knew investigations could take months, but I also knew one thing. The moment the first inquiry landed on the partners' desks, Vanessa would go from asset to liability. And liabilities in this business don't get protected. They get cut loose. All I had to do now was wait. I expected Michael Price to call me furious. Instead, he called me thankful. "Mr. Cole?" He said, his voice calm but edged with steel. "You may have saved me from something far worse than infidelity." 2 days after our call, Michael had quietly started digging. He found large, unexplained deposits in their joint accounts, over $200,000 in the last 18 months. Money that didn't match Vanessa's reported income. "I know financial crime when I see it," he told me. "And if those funds are tied to her work at Hamilton and Burke, the firm will want to know immediately." That was when I realized Michael wasn't just a divorce attorney. He was a former federal prosecutor. By the end of the week, he'd subpoenaed her banking records, email accounts, and business communications under the cover of divorce proceedings. Everything I'd given to the SEC, he now had the legal authority to present directly to the partners. And he planned to do it. "Ethan," he said, "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for me. But if our goals align, then so be it." The man who'd once been her biggest defender was now holding a knife to her career, and I just handed him the sharpening stone. When Michael and I met in person for the first time, it was at a quiet cafe on Madison Avenue. He arrived early, immaculate, in a charcoal suit, carrying a leather briefcase that looked older than I was. "You should know," he began, sipping his coffee. "This isn't the first time I've suspected Vanessa." That caught me off guard. He leaned in, voice low. 6 months ago, I noticed small inconsistencies, cash withdrawals, strange meeting locations, unexplained travel. I thought it was just an affair, but when I saw the pattern, he tapped the briefcase. I started building my own file. Inside was a binder thick with documents, bank statements, hotel receipts, even copies of emails between Vanessa and Richard discussing client strategy that read more like coded instructions for moving money. "She's been careful," Michael said, "but not careful enough. And now with your evidence and my legal reach, we have a complete picture." I realized then this wasn't just my revenge anymore. It was his. And in some ways, his was even more personal. Michael closed the binder and slid it across the table. "Ethan, I'm going to burn her world down. But I thought you'd like the honor of striking the first match." For the first time in months, I smiled without forcing it. We shook hands. The alliance was sealed. 2 weeks later, the storm hit. On a rainy Tuesday morning, Michael walked into Hamilton and Burke's boardroom with the calm of a man who'd already won. I wasn't there, but Ryan texted me updates in real time. Michael laid out everything: bank statements, emails, client records, the forged trade authorizations. Piece by piece, he dismantled the image Vanessa had spent years constructing. Richard Haynes tried to interrupt, but Michael's voice cut through him like glass. "This isn't a misunderstanding," he said. "It's fraud. And unless you want the SEC to knock on your door before lunch, you'll act now." By the time the meeting ended, Vanessa had been suspended pending a full investigation, her access badge deactivated. Security escorted her out past the same marble lobby where she'd once strutted like she owned the place. That afternoon, I got a short text from Michael Yermouv. I forwarded my entire evidence folder to the Wall Street Journal anonymously. Within hours, the headline was everywhere: "High-level executive at Manhattan investment firm under SEC investigation for securities fraud." It didn't name her, but anyone in the industry knew. By evening, her phone was blowing up her name, trending in the finance circles for all the wrong reasons. The game was over, and we'd both won. The fallout was swift and merciless. Within 48 hours, the SEC had frozen Vanessa's assets. By the end of the week, formal charges were filed: securities fraud, wire fraud, money laundering. Richard Haynes wasn't spared. His affair was now common knowledge, and when investigators found his approval stamps on multiple illegal trades, the board forced his resignation. His face disappeared from the firm's website overnight. Vanessa's former allies stopped answering her calls. The Connecticut network she'd leaned on for years cut her off entirely. No one wanted to be anywhere near her name when the subpoenas started flying. I didn't celebrate. Not in the way people might expect. Revenge wasn't about champagne and victory laps. It was about balance, about making sure the damage she caused was paid back in full. Weeks later, I accepted a new position in Portland. Better salary, better people, and for the first time in years, better peace of mind. Michael sent me a single-line email the day Vanessa's sentencing was announced: justice served. And maybe it was. If you've been listening this far, you know, something important. Sometimes doing the right thing means playing a game you never wanted to play. And sometimes you have to get your hands dirty to keep them clean. If you want more stories like this, real betrayals, real consequences, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Because out there somewhere, someone is already writing the next chapter, and you're going to want to hear it first.